Hello everyone, welcome to the Scumdogs Kennel. I'm your host, Chris Williams, and in today's Cryptid Corner mini-episode, I have Bigfoot and UFO stories to read to you today, folks. Both stories are very intriguing, and we're going to have a great time once again. Let's get into the first article, titled, Terrifying Bipedal Encounter Near Grande Prairie, Alberta Leaves Hunter with 14-inch Footprint. Let's hear about this Canadian Bigfoot encounter, folks, and what this hunter experienced. During Alberta's early archery season, an experienced hunter traveled deep into isolated oil and gas country south of Grande Prairie in search of trophy elk. After stopping beside a remote pipeline riser, he was startled awake by an explosive disturbance only feet away, followed by unmistakable bipedal footsteps and the discovery of a large human-like track. Let's read on and hear exactly what happened during this hunter's story, folks. I'll get right into my story, but first I want to provide some background about myself and the area where this happened. I'm a typical Albertan who works in the oil patch as a PLC programmer. I'm also an avid bow hunter, rifle hunter, and fisherman. Every year I take approximately 3 weeks off to backpack into remote terrain in search of trophy elk. At the time of this incident, I've been doing that for about 7 years in various parts of our province. There are some very large elk in Alberta. This happened during the opening of archery season in an area approximately 45 minutes south of Grande Prairie, Alberta. The road into the area was known as Teddy Lane. At that time, Teddy Lane was an old, unused road. 7 generations had not yet constructed its massive gas plant there. The further you traveled down the road, the more remote and isolated it became. Yeah, this sounds like the kind of place that Bigfoot would basically be, well, in, wouldn't it, folks? A remote area in the Canadian wilderness. So I'm not surprised that this guy had this encounter. A friend and I decided to follow Teddy Lane to a 4-way intersection approximately 20 kilometers in and establish a spike camp. Teddy Lane intersected with another road, South Imperial, which eventually dead-ended. The following morning, after a long night's rest, we locked our trucks and continued on foot down South Imperial. When we reached the dead end, we followed a pipeline corridor further northwest into the remote wilderness. As we traveled, we used cow elk calls and occasionally bungled from the tops of ridges and creek embankments. We reached a river-cut bank late that evening and established our main hunting camp. During the night, we took shifts, calling into the darkness, hoping to locate elk that we could pursue at first light. The following morning, we separated and traveled in opposite directions along the river. After several hours of cow calling while following a game trail, I reached a pipeline riser in the middle of nowhere. For those unfamiliar with the oil and gas industry, a pipeline riser is a location where a pipeline emerges above ground for inspection, isolation, or pigging. A pipeline pig is a large foam-like device that is forced through a pipeline under pressure. Concrete barricades had been installed around the riser to prevent vehicles from accidentally striking it. So, this sounds like this, particular mechanical instrument was well protected, doesn't it, folks? But apparently, this would not basically protect it from basically having, Bigfoot nearby. I mean, they could destroy it, I would imagine. But let's continue now and hear more of this guy's story. I decided to sit against one of the concrete barricades and rest my eyes. The forest was approximately 2 feet in front of me, and the trail I had been following was about as wide as a side-by-side vehicle. As I began to doze, an enormous snort erupted directly in front of me. Immediately afterward, the trees and brush exploded with movement. The snort sounded like someone suddenly releasing the air from a large tire, while the crashing vegetation sounded like a bull tearing through a china shop. Nearly soiling myself, I jumped over the concrete barricade, pulled an arrow from my quiver, and readied my bow. This would be one of the times where, if I had a bow, folks, I'd probably basically wish I'd actually had a gun. I mean, yeah, a bow and arrow is a good weapon, folks, but I doubt that it would take down a Bigfoot. In fact, I think if guns and, artillery can't stop them, a bow and arrow would be the last thing you'd want. Let's get back now to hear exactly what happened next. I was shaking like a little kid sitting in the principal's office. I remained there, listening while trying to regain my senses. What I heard next still does not make sense to me. I heard something moving rapidly away from me on 2 feet. I have heard countless animals during my life, and many animals have approached or surprised, me while I was hunting. What I heard that afternoon was not moving on 4 legs. The footfalls were bipedal. I waited approximately 20 minutes before I stopped shaking. Once I had collected myself, I cautiously approached the place where the disturbance had originated. In the mud, I found a 14-inch impression resembling a human footprint. So, it sounds like a typical Bigfoot track finding, folks. I've read this kind of thing in numerous stories. From random people working on the road to just some guy just moving through an area and discovering something like this, folks. Yeah. Let's read on here how this guy dealt with it, though, and thought about what it might have actually been. The track was pointing directly toward the place where I had been sitting. It was approximately 2 feet away from me. I sat there, staring at the print for some time. I searched the surrounding area for additional tracks, but unfortunately, I found only that one impression. I got out of there as quickly as possible, and I have never returned. Although I have never saw what had been standing in front of me, what I experienced that day was not normal. The feeling of dread that overtook me has affected me mentally for years until now. I've never told anyone this story. No doubt because he didn't want to face ridicule, and probably people saying that you didn't see Bigfoot. It was probably a bear track that got maybe, I guess maybe double imprinted, or maybe something was off about it. But you didn't see it or hear a Bigfoot. It was just a normal animal. And the fear was probably just basically being near such a creature. That's what a lot of skeptics will argue. Either way, we have to get now back to this guy's story, because I want to hear how he basically lived and dealt with this now. Either way, and basically what he thinks about it still. I will never return to Teddy Lane or that particular location. There are several additional details that may be relevant. I've taken extensive scent control precautions and was traveling upwind. I was mimicking a cow elk with calves, using both a reed call and a hoochie mama, a handheld elk call. The encounter occurred late in the afternoon on a hot day. When I heard the snort and the vegetation explode, I could not open my eyes. Everything seemed to move in slow motion. I do not remember being able to see again until I was on the opposite side of the concrete barricade. The sensation was similar to what I experienced during a car accident. Basically, with this exploding sensation, everything moving so fast that this guy just couldn't deal with everything, and he couldn't even open his eyes. The same kind of thing I can imagine basically being in a car accident, folks. Yeah. Either way, once again, let's continue. I knew the area well at the time. It was normally accessed only by helicopter operators or people using side-by-sides when the bridge over the river was in place. Conditions may be different now. I did not see anything. However, after hearing the bipedal footsteps and discovering the large track, I am convinced that either my hunting partner pulled off the greatest prank imaginable, or something approached, believing I was potential prey. Whatever it was, it apparently realized that I was not what it expected and got out of there as quickly as I did. That is my story. It feels good to know that I can finally share it without being ridiculed or shamed. Indeed, folks, this is probably why he basically kept it to himself, as well as maybe just having to, truly process that this actually happened to him. Either way, as I said, an insane story, folks, and anyone basically would understand that this guy probably didn't want basically fame for, what he experienced. He just wanted to unload it and perhaps maybe read out people and their similar experiences, or maybe talking with them and how they dealt with it, as well as researchers on ideas what it could have actually been. I think that's what it was. Either way, folks, an interesting story, but it's just the first. Because now we have the next story. Helicopter buzzes UFO experiencer's car after a late-night meeting in Ajax, Ontario. And read about this other Canadian, experiencer, who in his own words has seen UFOs and possibly been abducted. How he dealt with basically being buzzed by this helicopter that could have been controlled by the government, perhaps, maybe trying to harass him. Either way, let's now continue with this guy's particular bizarre story. During April and May 2009, UFO experiencer James Borg attended several meetings in the Greater Toronto area after leaving a private gathering in Ajax, Ontario at approximately 2 o'clock a.m. Borg claims a helicopter ascended over his car and pursued him west along Highway 401 toward Toronto. Okay, folks, so a very out there story. Let's continue. As a member of Toronto's first internet UFO group on meetup.com, the Extraterrestrial Craft and UFO Research Project, I initially enjoyed having UFO meetings close to my home. However, the introductory nature and superficiality of the meetings could not hold my attention for long. I already had many UFO sightings and related contact experiences under my belt, including what I believed were alien abductions. I soon became irritated with the group. After I began posting on its website, some members questioned the authenticity of my experiences. I felt as though I was already at a high school level in ufology, while most of the other members were still at the elementary school level. Many of the people questioning me had never experienced anything themselves, yet they smugly criticized my accounts. I eventually grew tired of it. Then one of the new members contacted me. "I read your post and feel that you're ready for the next level," he said. "What do you mean?" I asked. He replied, "Come to my house this Friday after work, and we'll talk about it. Please come and meet me. We'll smoke some cigarettes, drink coffee, and get to know one another. I think we have a lot in common as hardcore experiencers." "You're on," I told him. We arranged to meet that Friday. But it wasn't going to be any ordinary Friday meeting, folks. Apparently this guy was about to basically deal with something that, well, I imagine that he blames on the government, or maybe even on some of the people in his particular UFO group at the time. Maybe they somehow, knew that he was going to have this meeting. Either way, let's continue. I arrived at his home in Ajax at approximately 8 o'clock p.m. It was about 50 to 60 kilometers from where I lived. When we met, we hit it off like two long-lost brothers. We talked about UFOs and decided to start a new group, specifically for UFO experiencers, rather than another general interest UFO organization. We agreed that I would create the group and that the two of us would operate it together. I left his house at approximately 2 o'clock a.m. Before I departed, we both noticed a helicopter flying around his house. I did not think much about it at the time. I started my car and headed toward Highway 401. I was still traveling through the residential subdivision, only about a block from his house, when a helicopter suddenly buzzed the front of my car. It appeared to pass approximately 4 feet above the roof. Make no mistake, I believed that the helicopter was there for me. "Well, F that," I said aloud. Because, he was thinking that, is the government behind this, folks? Is it someone? Maybe a rich guy who doesn't like the idea, basically people talking about UFOs. Maybe some, corporate head, perhaps, who basically is overseeing some sort of UFO project. Or maybe it was, probably the Air Force from any number of governments. Or just the Men in Black. It could be that too. Either way, let's finish off this guy's story, folks, and talk about, our articles today and the stories involving them. I became convinced that the helicopter was trying to take me out. I believed my life was in danger. I also suspected there was an armed man inside the aircraft. Whenever the pilot maneuvered the helicopter in front of my car, I thought I could see someone preparing to take a shot. Each time this happened, I slammed on the brakes or abruptly changed my vehicle's direction, causing the helicopter to continue ahead of me. I accelerated up the entrance ramp and entered Highway 401, but the helicopter continued following me. It pursued me west along the highway, all the way to the area of Yonge Street in Toronto. At that point, the helicopter finally broke away. It appeared to turn back in the direction of Ajax, toward the area where it had first engaged me and my vehicle. As I said, folks, do you think the government is behind that? Could possibly be the Men in Black? This sounds like something that they could do, folks, but it also sounds like, the helicopter wasn't some black helicopter that we've heard about so many times before. It sounds like it could be that this was a plainclothes Men in Black or maybe a government agent, as if there might be a difference between them, folks. Do I believe that the, Men in Black might basically be part of the government? They could be some sort of, breakaway organization, folks, which is possible, but definitely has ties to the government. But this could also be some sort of government helicopter controlled by basically either some Canadian military officials, some sort of government, vehicle controlled by U.S. officials as well, or any number of people, folks. As I said, it could be that maybe this is, controlled by basically a corporate group who are researching UFOs and hate the idea of people basically talking about this, digging into things that they shouldn't because they worry that this could basically, break their meal ticket on this technology and controlling it. Then we also have Bigfoot, folks, which was a mysterious story that while the guy did not see it directly, didn't basically see a bipedal creature, his experience really makes you think it's real. Either way, we're at the end, so please go subscribe to my YouTube channel, Read Comics That Are Bad For You. You can use the YouTube link down below in the descriptions or the chat to go subscribe to me. Hit that like button for me. Make sure you're still subscribed. Leave some comments down below. Hit that bell for notifications. Make sure hit the part of the bell that give you all future notifications, and please share this video out. I'm Chris Williams from the Scumdogs Kennel. Thank you all for joining me. I'll be back again tomorrow with another great video, so be sure to come back again then. Until next time, folks, I'll see you all again soon.